So that's when I said, it's not the driver, it's the putter.
Ah! Yeah. Oh dear.
What a
Yeah,
great
very
joke,
good.
Rob.
Oh, good morning and welcome to another edition of the Digital Download. I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results, and I'm honored to be the guest host this week. On screen with us this week, we have three of my colleagues. I will ask each of them to introduce themselves, starting with Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. And I'm always excited to come here on the Digital Download, Rob, especially when you run it. It's always awesome. So it's a highlight of. I'm stealing Adam's words. It's a highlight. I've been really looking forward to it. I'm not just saying that. I really am. I really am looking forward to it.
Awesome, thank you. Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite with Tim, and what he said. Great.
Sounds great. And Lorena.
Hello, I'm Lorena Borgo. I am based in Lima, Peru, and I'm a legal marketing and business developer consultant at EDPE Consultants, and very, very happy to be here, Rob, today, Tim, Adam.
So happy to have
Lovely
you,
to see
Lorena.
you.
So this week's topic came to me when I was discussing my new job. One of my career bucket list goals was to teach at a university. And starting this semester, I've had that opportunity. I'm teaching an introductory business course to freshmen at Suffolk University. And I've been 2 weeks into it now, and it's everything I thought it would be, and more. The discussion came around to, well, what are you teaching? Yes, thank you, Adam. What are you teaching? Well, right now, I'm teaching an introductory business course. But what I'd really like to do eventually is to develop a sales curriculum. Turns out, I used to joke that they don't teach sales in college. That's actually not correct. There are more and more universities offering sales degrees these days. So not only would it be a course in sales, it would be a full 4-year curriculum around sales. But that led us to a question. Does somebody need a 4-year degree to be effective in sales? So that's what we want to kick around this week. Now, we know you, we know our audience. Our audience has been around the block, our audience has been through it. And maybe you have a degree and maybe you don't. And there's plenty of anecdotal evidence that speaks to both sides of that. And there's very little research that speaks to it. So, what we're really going to have to rely on this week are the anecdotes and the wisdom of the crowd. So, we are reaching out to the audience to ask you to participate extensively. You're generally great about that anyway. So, we're looking forward to hearing from you. We want to make sure that you are contributing to this conversation as much as we all are. But as I said, we're looking to the wisdom of the crowd here. I did find an article, ironically, later that day, or rather a LinkedIn post that speaks to exactly that. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share that. Let's see. How do I go about? Let's see.
Yeah, he is, isn't he?
There we go. So this post is from an SVP of marketing, Kyle Coleman. And he speaks about, is a college degree required for SDRs? SDRs, of course, being the sales development representative or business development representative, typically the entry level role for people breaking into tech sales. Now, full I do full is work with these tech companies as an outside recruiter, helping to find and place SDRs and sales executives and even sales leaders. So I have a interest in this as well. What was interesting to me was the position Kyle took. His VP was a firm yes. Kyle was a firm no. And Kyle goes on to explain exactly why, based on the experience he's had with other far training and developing people. He has found that hiring, how did he put it? Let me scroll down and get it exactly. Hiring for aptitude, not pedigree. You'll notice this particular post. One of them. Now, again, to the anecdotal evidence that we've been thinking about versus the act of data and so is probably a bit of a bias regarding as well. Very few people will want to contradict somebody's post, whereas many will support and even ensure their anecdotes that are a lot. But we roll it out to the group here and to the audience. In your experience, have you that a degree in, for that matter, anything, sales especially, is required to break? I have lost. I can't. If there are questions being posed, I'll ask someone else to chime in for me, please.
Rob, it's a really interesting debate. Personally, I think that salespeople don't need to have a degree. I think that I think you don't need to have a degree. I think that, but you need to have some. You need to have training. I've last week I told a story about the fact that when I was in a corporate role, there was 66 salespeople in my area in this corporate company. 7 of them always made their number and always did 200%. And when we did some research to find out what made those people different, what we found was that those 7 people always did training. Whether it was once a year or once a quarter, that they saw training and the access to training and being trained as being a competitive advantage. And sitting down preparing for this, when I first started in selling, I was very lucky. I had some sales leaders who could negotiate, but after I did a negotiation course, it changed my life. I rarely pay full price for stuff. Or if I do, it's just because I can't be bothered to negotiate. But it gave me an insight into what was happening the other side of the table, which enables me to plan to go into meetings and therefore work out what I can see as a win-win. So I win and they win and the customer wins. So there's certain things and certain skills I think that you need to have. Whether that should be a degree or not, I don't know. Or whether, I know a lot of people who've done degrees, say in biology or psychology or something like that, and then have come into sales. So, but whether you need, I know successful people who don't have degrees and don't have degrees in sales. So that's kind of my view.
I think what we do is a perfect metaphor for this, because we train people and give them the knowledge to use social as a platform to exploit their skills and promote themselves and do what they need to do in business. But knowing what to do and doing it are 2 different things. And I think that this is the issue particularly with something like sales, which is a vocation. You know, you've got, you can have the knowledge, but if you don't implement the knowledge and exhibit the behavior, you are going to fail. And I think that one of the challenges that we have, interesting that you flagged it in that post, or the guy that wrote the post flagged it, is that the expectation is that if we're going to hire someone, we're going to hire somebody that's got a degree. And I think that increasingly now that has become table stakes for people in order to get on the career ladder. And I think that's a really dangerous place to be, because often people assume that having a degree equals competence at something. And whilst, you know, one of my pet hates is when people say, you know, where were you educated? The School of Hard Knocks. You know, it's very funny, but actually there's a lot of truth in that. You know, what I want is, when I'm looking for people, I'm looking for people that have got experience of dealing with difficult situations. And I remember some years ago, I ran a design agency, and we hired somebody, a designer, and he was an incredibly talented young designer, fresh out of university, got a first in his degree, a magnificent portfolio. And he came and started on his first day, which happened to be a Monday. I guess they often are. So we sat down and we had a team meeting, and we said, these are the projects, and you need to go away and come up with some initial concepts for this, and we'll reconvene at 12 to go through those concepts and decide what's working and what isn't. And then everybody kind of went to their desks, and he sat there and he came up to me and he said, what, 12 today? Because what he had was, he had this skill, but it had been in an academic environment, which is, you've got a term to complete this project. And the most valuable thing that I've found in designers, which I worked a lot with designers in that period, was the ability to A, turn something around quickly, and B, to never run out of ideas. So, you know, you present something that you're proud of and the client says that's rubbish, and you present something you're proud of and the client says that's rubbish, and you present something, and you keep coming back with more and more and more ideas, and you're a bottomless pit. And it's the same with sales. You know, salespeople, the most important skill that a salesperson has, or should have, is the ability to get back up again when they're knocked down and try again and keep trying. And I think that that's one of the things that in the kind of the academic environment, you tend often not to see.
It's funny you say that, because day one of the course that I was teaching, I walked into the room, and I do this with every class. I've taught high school geometry and middle schoolers, and now college freshmen. And one of the first statements I make to them is, I want you to fail. Well, now I've got their attention. I even have a LinkedIn article that it goes by that same title. And what I share with them is, this is where you try stuff. This is where you experiment. This is where you fail. And I've used this analogy on this platform before as well. It's much like weightlifting, where you tear the muscles apart so that they can come back together even stronger. And that's what much of academia does not do. Much of academia is centered around, you know, let's get the grade. How do we get the A? And it's the grade for the grade's sake. Me, it's the learning for the learning's sake. I have all these papers to grade now and homework to assess, and I couldn't care less about that. I have to do it, and I will, but did you learn? If so, let's not worry about the letter I put on that paper. But that it's just interesting that when you were saying that's the idea that sparked with me.
I think it's a very. I joined this digital download session because I'm very interested in all related to sales. I work with a professional services provider, and they haven't taken any courses on sale at university, whether at university or maybe a training. I would like to highlight what Adam said. One thing is the academic, and the other thing is the practice. So maybe, for example, at university, you can get a sales title as a sales professional, but it will involve a lot of things like psychology, and maybe it's similar to what marketing or other professions or courses that marketing wasn't a career many years ago. It has developed to a career. Maybe sales will later. But I am not sure if it's a matter of we need if we are going or somebody is going to hire a sales professional. But what I think is very important is to train. That's what Tim mentioned, to train people with soft skills and also with other skills to be able to sell. Now, my question is it necessary to train, for example, lawyers or accountants during their undergraduate period in sales? Because, and now I'm finishing, many of the lawyers with whom I talk, they say, oh, we haven't learned marketing or sales at university. And really, when we left university, we saw that we needed it. When do they need really to learn that? And is it like like in a professional level? Or that's my point, my question.
That's a really good point. And I think that what you're doing, Rob, in terms of that introduction to business, it needs to cover all of those different bits, whether you're studying a business degree or not. If you're in business, if you're in the working world, you need to understand a bit about marketing, yourself and your business. You need to understand a bit about selling. You need to understand a bit about career development. You need to understand all of those things that impact you personally. But I think that a lot of the challenge, particularly with people whose minds are wired in the professional services world, so lawyers, accountants, even doctors as well, where the desire for the acquisition of knowledge is an end in its own right, rather than using that knowledge and implementing that knowledge in a practical kind of way. And I think that one of the challenges that we have is that sales is a very action-based activity. So the fact that you know how to sell something is not good enough. The fact that you can sell something, you can implement it, you can have conversations, you can process that. All of that is the thing that is really important. And I think that the challenge always here is that people need to understand that the learning the theory of something is one thing, and the deploying that theory and using it is something entirely different, but equally important.
So, what's the value of a 4-year degree that's not even in a sales specialty, whether it's marketing or geology? I'm working with clients that insist on a 4-year degree, and they don't care what that degree is, but it has to be a 4-year degree. I have some thoughts around that, but let me ask the panel here. Why do you think that might be?
When I joined International Computers Limited, ICL, which was at the time the only UK computer company, as a graduate, so this is a couple of years ago, 55% of the people that they employed didn't have computer studies as a degree. They were actually looking for people that had different subject areas, biology, geography, and things like that, because what they were looking for was the application of skills. So the understanding is, if you've been on a 4-year degree, you know certain things, and there's a certain you have a certain level of intelligence, and what they want is to bring that and apply that. Now, I'm not saying that people who don't have a degree can't do that. It's just that was the criteria that company used as a way of getting into the company. And those people went off and have had, because I've tracked them, successful careers in IT. So it didn't. So my point being is just because you've got a particular degree in a particular area doesn't mean that you actually have to go and do that as a job. And you can, and it, I know lots of people that have retrained in the 30s or and got MBAs because they wanted to have the business qualification, but it was about recognizing that they had a certain level that they then went and applied.
Yeah, and I think that demonstrating that you can be educated to a certain level is potentially an important step in refining people. I think one of the challenges that we have, certainly in the UK at the moment, is that now everybody gets a degree. Not everybody, but when I was of university age, I think 3 or 5% of people went to university. Now everybody gets a degree, and the
50% of school leavers get degrees.
Yeah. So it used to be that it was the high watermark for your competence in an academic endeavor, and now it isn't. It's you're in top half if you get a degree, which actually means that it puts a different onus on where the selection process happens. And certainly I think for because my wife and I have 2 children of university age. One of them is at university, one of them has decided not to go to university. And the thinking behind that is, if you don't know what you want to do with your life, why would you go and study something that doesn't help you do that and rack up an enormous debt in doing that ultimately you may never be able to pay back if you don't get a job which pays you more as a result of being a university graduate? So clearly, if you're a doctor, you need to go to university and get a degree in medicine. And if you're an architect, you need to get, because these are prerequisites for doing those roles. But there are so many roles where that isn't necessary as a degree, but that on the job or vocational training, or in the UK, BTECs or NVQs, are potentially very valuable degrees, like apprenticeships, learning how to plaster or be an electrician or whatever, which teach you practical application of practical skills. And I can't help thinking that sales is very much in that kind of group. It's not about what you know, it's about what you do. And as somebody said, Andrew said, the experience of how to fix things when it goes wrong. And actually nowhere is that more telling than in sales, because you're having one-to-one conversations with individual people, and those people do not all respond in the same way to what you say. And when the conversation goes off track, you have to be able to think on your feet and bring it back. And maybe that's something which is an aptitude which is developed over many times of getting it wrong.
We have a qualification in the UK called BTEC. And BTEC is a vocational qualification. So if you were going to be a plumber, electrician, you do a BTEC. And you can do that. You can either go to college straight away, or what you would do is you do it on day release, which means that you'd be a plumber 4 days a week and go to college once a week. I kind of see sales sitting in if it was me, I would see sales sitting in the BTEC, because I think it's about application of knowledge. And what I would want is, I would want to go and be a salesman for 4 days a week and then go 1 day a week to college or something like that, rather than study sales for 4 years and then. So I've been involved in 2 sales university courses. One at Rutgers, which is an online course on social selling, and another one is with the I've got with the Spanish organization who do the MBA online. By far, I get a lot of traffic from people that are doing the MBA online. There's now a sales module as part of that. I'm in that. I'm not the only person, but Chris Voss, the guy who wrote the Let's Split the Difference books, in there as well. That gets me an awful lot of traffic in terms of people saying, I've done this course, it's really good. They don't say they've done this course and it's really bad, but they've done this course, it's really good, and I'd like to connect with you. So there are different types of ways of providing vocationary training for salespeople, not just about going away and doing a degree.
I think the other thing. Sorry, go on, Lorena.
No, may I say something, Rob? When I listen to you and then listen to Tim and Adam, I can recognize there is a difference between the European view of studies and the American one. And you are American, and Tim and Adam are in Europe. So Europe has developed, like what they say, university degrees and this institute degrees. It's like, I know very well the Germans, and Germans do the same. They have university degrees and the not professional studies. But in the United States, I have the feeling, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you put all at the university. So you don't have, I think, that middle level of preparation for plumbers, electricities, hair dressers, or whatever. And I think it's important to it's a reason, for example, why marketing is today a career. It wasn't before. I don't know if in Europe it's a career. It's a career, but it has developed later than in the United States. So I think it's a different approach, and that sales can be taught at university, maybe a course on how, or what we are doing at DLA, the Ignite, not to prepare people to do sales, but I'm not sure if it should be a professional degree neither.
So I remember about 10 years ago now, when my hometown, we're a suburb just outside of Boston, we were looking for a new superintendent of schools for our district. We have, I think, about 6 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school. And the candidate that really impressed me said, right now, Melrose, my hometown, has about 95% of the high school graduates going on to college. And her words, I think that should be closer to 80%. I was in complete agreement. We are sending too many kids to college, and the ROI on college degrees is diminishing because the costs of college are significantly outpacing wages and even inflation and any return they could hope for. But I think this all stems from, and I hope somebody out in this audience can help me with this, because I've done some research and I still can't find it. I know that it's tracked on a US government report, but I want to know where this originated. Somewhere it was first said, those that graduate with a college degree in their lifetime will earn $1 million more than those that don't. I hate that fact because A, I can't see the resources, the research that went in to back that up. And B, to me, that lumps in everybody who sits on the couch and doesn't want a job with all of the professionals who have gone on to vocations and run their own business. And I think it's just inherently wrong. But it's because of that fact, if you will, and the repetition of that fact, and what parent would want to put their child at a disadvantage, that everyone sends their kids to college. You have to go to school.
But I do think, though, that there's a bigger question here, isn't there? Which is, in the US or the UK, you might do a 3 or 4 year degree course for something, and that's a long time. It's a long time. So there was a report that said something like, by the time you get to your last year in university, 50% of what you learn in your first year isn't relevant anymore. Now, I'm sure that isn't the case with some things. It will be the case with science, and it will be the case with marketing, and it will be the case with many things, but it will be some things where that isn't true. But generically, I think we can safely say that education is about collecting best practice from things and then putting that into a hopper and teaching people what is best practice. We have often said that the problem with best practice is that if you follow best practice, you're simply copying what somebody else has done. And that isn't where the win is. And I think that whilst clearly being educated to a university level does have some advantages, it does open some doors if it's the right university and you've got the right degree and you've got the right grade from that university. But I think that if we look at people that we would consider to be massive innovators, massively wealthy individuals, huge success stories that have gone on to innovate and do remarkable things in the last 20, 30 years, there's Steve Jobs, there's Bill Gates, there's Elon Musk, there's Mark Zuckerberg, these people that have fundamentally changed the world. The one thing that they all have in common is they all dropped out of university because they said, this is a waste of time. Now, I'm not saying that it is a waste of time, but what I am saying is that, and perhaps it is that university, that waste of time environment that they used as a springboard to go off and do their own thing, to give them the confidence to do their own thing. But what Mark Zuckerberg knew was that he was going to achieve more by parking his law degree and going to do whatever it was.
What did he do?
No, it's his roommate that did law, wasn't it? And Steve Jobs, dropped out of even though his birth parents were so desperate for him to go to university and said that's a prerequisite of us letting him go up for adoption, and his parents scrimped and saved to put him into university. He did one semester and then he dropped out in order that he could drop in and go and learn loads of different things at other courses at the university. And then after a year, he quit to go and do Apple. And I think these success stories demonstrate that we need to keep our eyes open and our horizons broad. And simply assuming that going to university and getting a degree is your launch pad to greatness is potentially profoundly wrong these days.
So why do you think companies require a degree?
Because companies are led by old people like us.
I think sometimes we started off the conversation, which is that quite often there's in recruitment. I think didn't we talk about this last week, which is that quite often when we talk about recruitment, it's a tick box. Yeah. So they've got to have a degree, they've got to be this, they've got to be this, they've got to be this, they've got to be this. Whereas, if we take Adam's video from today, here we are in what is we're in a massive transformation as a society and as a business, as big as the transformation in terms of the Industrial Revolution. And are the skills that actually we got 20 years ago applicable to business now? I get a lot of grads coming to me saying, I'm learning stuff at the university. And I did a marketing degree. I've now come out of doing a marketing degree. I've done 2 years in marketing. What I learned in a degree wasn't applicable to the way that the world is.
Yeah. In my experience, 3 factors are at play. First of all, it narrows down the list. If you post a job for a salesperson, you are likely to get hundreds of applicants. You need a quick and dirty way to cut that down. Because the fact of the matter is, there is no one person who is perfect for that role. Yeah,
I think that's absolutely right. I do think, though, that we had a conversation about this, an internal call rather than a digital download.
Just about Rob's frozen. Rob, I don't know if you can hear us. It might be worth you going out and coming back in again. But
maybe write him a chat.
Okay, carry on, Adam.
Yeah, so I was just saying that we had a conversation about this fairly recently, which, so one of the problems that we have is that recruiting people into a business is often a historical process. So, we've hired somebody, they can't do the job. So what we do is we sack them, and then we use the job description and the parameters to hire their replacement. And surprisingly, we get exactly the same person back again. and this is fundamentally not tackling any of the challenges that we have, and that's the whole kind of challenge facing recruitment now. Yes, you have to refine the number of candidates down, but is having a degree or not one of the parameters that you should use for that?
Andrew makes a point. It's there's a joke, I'm sure you've seen it, Andrew, which is that the joke will say they've got to have a degree. It's a graduate job, and they've got to have 15 years experience.
Yeah,
I think when I hire somebody, I prefer if this person at least try it at university. Why? Because I think university gives you a kind of a sound knowledge and how, and if you hadn't that at school or at home, for example, to read, you in the United States, it's like college. I think people need basis, not only a profession, but really they need to have a basic knowledge in different areas so they can really develop later on in their professions. So that's my doubt sometimes. And secondly, going back to what you said and mentioned about like the best universities and not the, we are changing our minds sometimes, because we know that the people that came from best universities have originated world crisis. So it's not a guarantee to hire somebody from, I don't know, an Ivy League or Oxford or whatever, because we know that people have sometimes led to wars. Let us say, exaggerate a little bit, but it gives you like a guarantee, like a certification that people were well prepared. But it's also, and it's developed to a prejudice. And I've learned, for example, and I've hired, for example, right now, a person from a university here in Peru that it's not the top, but she's very, very good at what, and very smart, and she does very well. So, I mean, we don't have to be prejudiced about to have a profession or to come from a certain university.
Having said that, though, you know, if you've come from an Ivy League university or you've come from Oxford or Cambridge, their selection process for who goes to university is one of the most stringent selection processes anywhere on the planet. So if you want somebody that is in that top stripe of academic intellectual brilliance, then absolutely those people have been vetted to the point where you can guarantee that they're going to be really clever individuals. The question is, though, do you need to be clever to do this particular job? You know, whatever this job is. In marketing, maybe not. Maybe you don't need to be clever. Maybe you need to be creative or innovative. In sales, do you need to be clever? You need to have a very high EQ, emotional intelligence. But do you need to have a very high IQ? Possibly not, because it's about forming bonds and winning trust. So I think that there are a whole load of assumptions that we make. If you're clever, therefore you're going to be good at anything. Well, you're not. Are you going to be a good footballer? No. Are you going to be a good racing driver? No. Many racing drivers and footballers are very clever. And part of the reason that they're so clever is that it's a psychological need to excel at things. And that's why lots of musicians are very clever people, as well as being very good musicians. But I don't think the two are, there is an overlap in that Venn diagram, but it's not a complete synergy between the two.
Are you back, Rob?
I am sorry about that.
You said I've been thinking about this, and there's three things about, and then you froze.
So, thank you. The three things I was thinking of, first of all, it narrows down the list. When you put a job role, you're going to get hundreds of applicants. and you need to sort through that. And my belief is that while there are people who are qualified and even highly qualified, you do one and only one person who is perfect for the role. You are much better off who is highly qualified for it. And having a degree is just one way. Another reason that companies require, because it serves as a proxy for and even maturity, right or wrong. It's probably the biggest reason, the unsaid reason, is a degree. Therefore, anyone that works for me is going to have to as well.
Yeah,
be that right or
I think that's nailed it. That's absolutely the case.
I think that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I think more than anything else, it's because I worked really hard for 4 years to get my degree. Therefore, you're going to have worked 4 years really hard to get your degree.
And that's I think that's the fact that people recruit people who are like them.
Yeah, based on their own image. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Diversity initiatives be damned. That is still often.
Yeah.
So I'm working with a client right now.
So here in the UK, there's some companies that even insist on a level of degree. So, for example, I went for a job at KPMG many years ago, and even though I was the best person in the world to do the job, I didn't get it because I didn't have a 2-1, because they only recruited people with 2-1s. I don't act, but so for the record, I don't have a degree. I have what's called an HND, which is actually a vocational qualification, but you still have to go to university to get it. But I was turned down because I didn't have a 2-1.
And it is so one of the things that I have seen with education as a whole. This is not degree bashing, but education as a whole is that it can, if you're not careful, it can educate out of people their ability to innovate and think outside the box, because they're told this is the solution. Here's the question, this is the answer. And actually, what I think we're learning increasingly now with our interactions with people and with businesses and with the world as a whole is that there's more than one answer. And often the answer that we thought was the correct answer is in fact profoundly wrong. And what we have is a situation where the education system hasn't caught up. So Sir Ken Robinson did 3 TED Talks about this very thing, and this idea that we educate creativity out of people. And I'm not talking about creativity with a pencil and paper and a paint, but I'm talking about creative solutions to existing problems. And the problem is that the more we push people down that road, the more we rob those people of the opportunity to look outside of their education. And the problem is that there is no initiative, or very little in the way of initiatives within the educational and the academic system to encourage people to think about how they can solve creatively the challenges that we're facing.
Seth Godin
Adam,
speaks on that a lot as well.
I now, when you were talking about that, I remembered when you mentioned, for example, the cases of Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs. No, they started and they left, but maybe it's interesting to spot on or put an eye on. They achieved to be accepted by the best universities. So that certificates that their brains were different than other brains. So I mean, no,
I think they were brilliant people. I mean, I think the best example of that is that when Facebook was set to open in China, Mark Zuckerberg learned to speak Chinese, learned to speak Mandarin to go and introduce Facebook to China. Now, it's worth, I think it was Mandarin, and I think that the staggering fact about Mandarin is that the language is so complex, that half of the people for whom it is their native language are not fluent in it. That's how difficult a language it is. And yet he went there and he said, hello in Chinese, hello, I'm so excited to be here. And everybody was like, really, oh, he's learned to say the opening in Chinese. And then he said, first of all, right, are there any questions from the audience in Chinese? And someone asked him in Chinese, and then he answered them in Chinese, and clearly he learned to speak the language. Now, here's a guy with an IQ of in excess of 200 that can turn his hand to anything. And yes, that enabled him to go to Harvard. But actually, there's more to it than that. When he was there, he realized that, a group of old people teaching me the way things used to be is not how I'm going to make my mark on the world. And I think that often that's the challenge, isn't it? That educational establishments are not at the cutting edge of what's current. They're looking at stuff which is very cemented in and is trailing edge.
Do we have other articles bring to the conversation?
You had a brilliant one that you found, Tim, didn't you, that you shared with us?
Which one was that? The cost of a degree?
Yeah, and there was a poll on that, wasn't there, that people were invited for, which I filled out, and the poll was, and there were like 7,500 votes on this poll. It said, is a university degree still worth the money? Yes, no, other. So other was 5%. Yes was 35%. No was 59%, which is a staggering admission, isn't it? That 2/3 of people, still 59%, 2/3 of people thought that actually a university degree wasn't. Now, whether or not that informs recruitment policies and selection policies will remain to be seen.
Yeah, just so people know, this is one of the LinkedIn news items. So there's a whole bunch of articles that they've brought together from different people based around that subject.
Ironic that it came up this week.
Yeah, there was a new an article in the Times. They do a good university guide. Well, it's actually the Sunday Times, so the Times newspaper, and it's got some facts here about the forecast of the UK government. That will be that it will have to write. It was at the US government write off 40% of the current student debt, with many graduates not earning in the working lifetime to fully pay back their loans. In fact, graduates now need to earn £65,000. So what's that? That's $80,000 to even reduce the debt in the current repayment interest rate of 7.3%, which is about 3% over the current base rate.
Yeah, this does also highlight the fact that education is a business. Obviously, when you and I were at school, Tim, education wasn't a business. It was a service that was provided to the citizens of the country. And now there are parameters around this, but I know somebody that was a lecturer at university, and so I won't point you in the direction of who it is, but some of the shocking things that he came back saying about that was he had some problem students and he wanted to throw them off the course, and he was told you can't, and you can't because they're paying and we need the money. And then it got to the point where he wanted to fail people, and he was told, well, you can't fail people because one of the key parameters for success of people selecting which university they're going to go to is what's the pass rate. So if you go to a top university, you go to Oxford or Cambridge or Bristol or wherever, then half the people fail. Well, 20% of the people fail because they haven't reached the standard that the university considers to be acceptable. As you go further down the league tables, more and more people need to pass, because what you want is you want to align good teaching with the ability to get a degree. So he wasn't allowed to fail anybody as a result of that. which is a terrible admission, isn't it? Because part of this is about selecting. Here's a framework. You have to achieve this in order to get this stamp of approval.
So, as we've only got 10 minutes left, Lorena, this is your article.
Yes, actually, it's not an article. I came across with this guy, and he's a lawyer, and he on his headline, you can see that he's a sales agent for lawyers. And I went through his profile, and it was very interesting because, as mentioned, he studied law. But when he writes or his excerpt about him, he says, "No, here's where I could tell you about the brilliant experience I have gained over the last, and there is lots. I have helped several law firms. No, in addition, secure millions in additional revenue during my career. Instead, I will just say that my career's purpose is to help others achieve their goals." And I like this profile, and I'm starting to follow him. I asked him to connect, and he accepted. So I'm very happy. I can follow him. Maybe I can talk to him because he's a lawyer that has been involved in the sales area of selling professional services in law firms. And that's why I found it interesting, because thinking about, do we need a sales or a professional title to work as a salesperson? What do we need to do, or do we need to be trained? So it was my interest, and that's why I joined this conversation today, Rob, because I found it very and highly interesting to talk about that matter.
So let me ask the group this. We have, in minutes, I would say, come to the conclusion that it's necessary to start a career in sales, and really has been implied. But what about from an individual contributor to a lead? Is a degree necessary in that aspect?
Could you say that again? Because you were breaking up really badly there.
Oh, we've talked about the degree not necessarily break into sales, but what about progressing and moving from an individual contributor to a sales leader? Value to having a degree at that point?
Oh, good.
Yeah. I don't know. I think if you circle back to Tim's earlier comment, which was a degree in sales, a degree is irrelevant, but training is crucial. And I think that's part of the thing, isn't it? I think that sales is such a good metaphor for so many team sports in the world. And actually, you can be a theoretical leader, but generally speaking, the best performing coaches and captains of teams are people that have been through it and done it themselves. And I think that sales leaders that have risen through the ranks to become leaders are often very powerful leaders because they understand the challenges facing the people that are at the coalface. But I do think that one of the kind of the oddities of business is that, Tim, you're a brilliant salesman, therefore we'll promote you to a role where you're not a salesman anymore and you're a manager. And actually, he may be a brilliant manager, but you can't make that assumption. And I think that until we think about, and Andrew's comment, is this trickling down to secondary high school education? No, it isn't. And I think that the challenge here is that we are not asking people to create their own vision for where they're going. So Tim, as a salesman, a number carrying salesman, if he's happy as a salesman, he should be able to enjoy and be applauded for being a salesman, not to see that he has to become a sales manager to do. And the same with people at school. you need to set up an expectation in people where whatever your passion is, or whatever you have an interest in, or whatever you have an aptitude for, is the thing that you should be developing and you should be focusing on. Because somebody has to be a footballer, somebody has to be a doctor, somebody has to be a salesperson, somebody has to be an accountant. The world needs all of those things, but what it doesn't need is to be told that if you're a lawyer, you're worth more than if you're an accountant, or if you're an accountant, a salesman. Because actually, this complex machine that is society only works if everybody is doing the things that they're best at and they enjoy most and feel fulfilled and are rewarded for doing those things.
Leadership requires different skills. When I was in my last corporate role, I went on an excellent leadership training course. It was excellent, but the balance was the money that they were putting into the leadership training. The business case was it was cheaper than keep paying all the fines that they were, or the tribunals that they were taken to by employees. Because of the fact that the leaders that they were promoting didn't understand certain things about leadership, which is they didn't understand employment law, or they didn't understand about diversity or whatever. They might have been a great salesperson, but they actually didn't understand the world of business and the impact that can make. And saying certain things or sending certain emails can end up costing you a lot of money in a tribunal.
Mm.
And that's one of the things that this organization had to deal with, which is why they put all of their leadership through this particular leadership course. And I think I've been very lucky that I've been and done lots of training through my career. And each time I've done that training, and I've probably gone to organizations where they say that they do training. I think I've always thought that was important. But I've done lots of training or parts of training through my career because I think that you're forever learning. And you can always go on a course and learn something, whatever it is.
I agree with Tim. And what I would like to add is it's very important as a salesperson to know the organization where you work, so you can have the skills, and sometimes we do confuse or misunderstand that you think a good salesperson is a person that talks very well and is very persuasive. And actually, it's not. It's not. You have to know very well your business. You have to know very well the market, the stakeholders, the persons that work on the business and what you are selling. So I think practice is sometimes more important than theory, but you have to have you have to be very well trained and to have knowledge, and not only you have to be solid and sound. I think good salespeople are not the people that talk a lot and say a lot, and we tend to say, oh, you're a very good seller, but you are, because I won't buy anything from you, and I think they have to really be solid in their knowledge, and that doesn't mean necessarily a professional degree. I think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we are coming up to the top of the hour. I don't know that we solved anything here, but we never set out to solve it. Really just kick the can around and see what gets uncovered.
I am pleased that the cat behind you, the cat behind you is now settled down, because it was quite moving around, but it's now settled and is going to sleep.
Yeah, I love this cat, black cat. I love him.
Active here. Computer failures, connection issues. Yeah,
everything
I've got a lot going on. TJ, I do want to thank everyone in the audience for contributing to thank everyone on the panel for coming to this discussion well-versed and really covering for me with all of that here. I want to apologize to the audience for all of that, but I think all in all, we were able
some great discussion points and another successful digital download. Thank you, everyone, for being a
Rob.
part of it.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much.
Really
Thank you
appreciate it.
very much. Have a nice weekend.
We'll see you all next
Bye-bye.
week.